across from Meters. It's 1900 North.
Yeah.
1943 North is our address.
And out in the
State
the next
Why
thing
would that take so long to get to the middle?
intersection where you don't know.
Now, to me, if you're gonna have business in there, dentists would be one of the best things you could do.
It's right next to the Instacare, and they've just built a new assisted living facility, right?
Yeah.
And we're on the same property as the assisted living
Oh, really?
facility. We're right in front of it.
My big question was,
So,
To me, that would be a
how
plus.
are
That'd
you
be
guys
easy.
gonna get
Yeah.
your
I don't know.
well, there's just all little details. The sidewalk has to be here, and it's crazy.
to the site? That road is yeah,
When I-
full of trenches.
We moved in a little subdivision right across the road from the mall.
Okay, yeah.
I lived there for 7, 8 years now. We built a new house out there just north of
Parking structure.
UVU.
Okay.
But we probably prefer it not be like the super heavy stuff like
Back then, they was really strict on, you know, you had to have so many feet between houses and everything. They've done better than all that.
Yeah, now they're this close together.
Stand between them, both of them.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be all those forms.
Yeah, down at Vineyard. Do you know Vineyard where Geneva lives? My brother has a home, and they're on top of each other.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
could reach out a window and touch it.
Get it done.
Really, I guess, should have been glad that all these big apartments they're building, they fill them up as fast as
Yeah.
they finish them.
I mean, that intersection.
It's crazy.
I guess people don't.
It's just the intersection.
It's really growing.
But me and my wife start doing this out.
Yeah.
In the winter, she shuffles and walks around with it. In the summer, she mows the lawn, I shuffle.
Yes.
I like that.
West Morning Road to State Street, 1 month, and then do
Oh, that's
the
funny.
gas line from West Morning Road to the park the next month. But Rob doesn't want to, he wants to do like the whole thing. He's just like, just do it, just get it done.
Boy, Neaters just kind of sit there in that little building for years and years, and then they just kind of expanded.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. They've really grown a lot.
I'm just here to take notes.
Come on, do it with them, Brad, man.
So did your kids go to Mountain View?
That's why we pay you to stand up there. And
Yeah.
Kathy's got more experience than.
Okay.
You don't
That's where I
squat.
went.
Right.
My last name's Flagler.
Flagger.
Jim
So,
Cox,
what are your kids' ages?
I got kids older than I have now. One's in the
You're
middle
actually on your
50s.
payroll?
One's
So
right around
that, see,
50.
okay, so Kathy's paying you to go up there.
Middle 40s.
I'm on retainer with him. I don't do
One's
it.
just under 40.
Okay. So I'm 39. So,
Are you?
So you're getting paid
Talk
to
to
sit there and answer
Kevin,
my question.
right?
and everybody wants.
yeah.
You're right.
Look 'em up and see if I know.
I think that's
She's
fun.
very good at
The
that.
kids I went
Exactly,
to
that's
school
what you
with
two
always
should be
went
out
out.
there. I'll just
Every 5 years we
sit
have
here
a
and take
reunion,
notes.
and then usually once or twice a year, a bunch of us get together, 25, 30 of us go
Hey,
to
that's
lunch.
fun.
It is.
That's awesome.
Keep trying to, because I appreciate the chairs
Hi, Bill. Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you, you too.
Yes.
Good, how are you?
So-
Good. You guys worn out already? Yeah, we're already worn out.
Yeah, it's approved based on a condition that they'll get you.
Hey.
And so hopefully I can just get
was normally right after. So, yep.
Yes. Yeah. I'd like to call the Orem Planning Commission meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody here, planning members and the staff and the public. Thank you for showing up. I've asked Mike Cochran to go ahead and give us an opening prayer.
Father, we're grateful to be here together as members of Orem community. Grateful for opportunity to serve and to be concerned and just to be together. We pray that during any deliberations this evening that there will be a great cordiality among all participants. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and start with item point 1.
Item 3.1 is a site plan approval. The applicant is Amy Telford with Berry Dental, and they are requesting that the city approve the site plan for the new Berry Dental building located at 1943 North State Street in the C2 zone on the condition that the applicant is able to get an updated parking agreement. So on your left, you can see the zoning map, and on the right, you can see the overhead showing you the location of the proposed building. Here is their site plan. Currently on this site plan, there are 2 parking spaces short. That's why they are working on the updated parking agreement with the building just to the left on your picture. That is the Orem Assisted Living Facility, and they do have extra parking spaces to share in the parking agreement. If the agreement falls through for whatever reason, they are proposing this site plan. And really the only difference is that the dumpster up here used to be over here, and in moving it, they were able to squeeze in 2 more spaces. The previous site plan is preferred by both the applicant and staff, which is why they are trying to get the parking agreement first. Here's the landscaping. You can see that it meets all requirements, and in fact, it actually has more than is required. Here are some of the elevations. There's a lot of stone and wood, so they're going for that kind of alpine look. Here are the rest of the elevations, and you can see that there is a half basement down there as well. So the Development Review Committee and staff has determined that this request complies with the Orem City Code. Staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the requested site plan for Berry Dental on the condition that the applicant is able to get the updated parking agreement.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Do you have anything to add to? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody on the committee have Any pretty straightforward? Okay, I think we can go ahead and make a motion. Anybody want to make a motion on that with the condition on there?
I'll do it.
Okay.
So, the Planning Commission then will recommend that we approve the requested site plan for Berry Dental located at 1943 North State Street in the C2 zone on the condition that the applicant is able to get an updated parking agreement.
Michael Cochran's made a motion. Second. And
All in favor?
we're approved then.
Well, we have to, all in
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Any opposed?
I got to get that formality down, you know. Okay. Item 3.2.
Item 3.2 is a public hearing because it is a deep lot subdivision. In this case, the applicant requests the city approve the primary plat for the Escamilla deep lot subdivision at 1616 South Carterville Road. Once again, on the left, you can see the zoning map, and on the right, you can see the aerial. The dark blue lines in the aerial are the Provo-Orem boundary. So that is the University Parkway right behind the property, and then Carterville Road right in front. Here's the subdivision they're proposing. They are in an R12 zone, and so they have plenty of space in both of their lots to meet code. Once again, the Development Review Committee has determined that the proposed preliminary plat complies with all applicable requirements. Staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the preliminary plat for the Escamilla Deep Lot subdivision at 1616 South Carterville Road. Are there any questions?
Any questions on? Looks pretty straightforward as well. Is the applicant here?
Right here.
Would you like to add anything?
No.
Okay. All right, well, we'll bring it back to the Planning Commission. It looks like it's...
A public.
Oh, excuse me. There's a public hearing, so if anybody would like to come up, please come up and state your name and keep your comments, I guess, to 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Well, don't all stand up at one time.
There's none. So there's no
Okay, we'll just close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission. And I think it's pretty straightforward. The lot sizes are plenty of room with both shows 12,000 square feet minimum, which it meets, both lots meet. So I don't see any issue there. I think it's pretty straightforward. Did we make a motion?
Make a motion with regard to the preliminary. With regard to the preliminary plat for the Escamilla Deep Lot subdivision at 1616 South Carterville Road, I move that the Planning Commission comply with agree with the Development Review Committee proposal and approve this. Send it on to the council.
Okay. Rod Spencer's made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mike Cochran second.
I think you're actually the final approval on
Oh, then it's done.
So
Okay.
just for clarification.
Oh, so this doesn't go to the council?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want us to restate that?
No, I think as long as you understand that clarification.
We do.
This is final. Okay.
We approve.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 3.5.
Item 3.3 is the University Place Residences site plan.
Point 3.
The applicant requests the city approve the site plan for the University Place Residences at Parkside, located at approximately 570 East, 1150 South in the PD 34 zone. So once again, on your left, you have the zoning map. You can see that it is within the PD 34 zone. And then on the right, you have the overhead aerial showing both the location of the already approved parking garage, although you can't see it on the picture. It's the 550 East. And then the kind of odd-shaped area attached to it is where the proposed residences would be going. So here is the overall site plan. You can see that the residences wrap around the parking garage, and one side faces north and the other side faces east, looking the park. Here is the basic level 1 floor plan. You can see that there's some retail space, and then the rest of it is taken up with units. Here are the upper levels, which are, again, pretty much only units with some parking garages that will be used for residences. Here's a close-up of the typical units, so you can see that they're mostly 2 bedrooms, but there are 1 and 3 bedrooms as well. And then you can get an idea of what the garages will also look like. The landscaping plan for this one is pretty minimal because it is mostly a parking garage, but there are some trees out there along 1150, and then the park also helps with that. So here are some elevations if you are looking south towards the north face of the building. And here are the elevations if you are standing on the east side looking west at the eastern elevation. And here is a close-up of some of the details. You can see that there is some wood on the bottom of the balconies, as well as some insets of wood in there. And the reason it is primarily black and white is because some nearby stores are going to be redoing their frontage to match the same kind of theme, and they wanted it running throughout. So the Development Review Committee has determined that this request complies with the Orem City Code, and staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the site plan for the University Place residences at Parkside, located at 570 East, 1150 South in the PD 34 zone.
Okay. The applicant here? Would you like to add anything?
Only if you have questions.
Oh, come on.
Well,
Get up there.
it looks great. We've kind of reviewed a lot of these plans already. The architecture looks good. Excuse me?
Is the architect?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, state your name.
Chris Longson, representing Woodbury's and ICO.
Okay. Any questions?
I don't have any.
No.
None.
Okay. I'd say we make a recommendation or make a motion. Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay.
I make the motion that the Planning Commission approve the site plan for University Place residences at Parkside, located at 570 East, 1150 South in the PD 34 zone.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, go item 3.4.
Item 3.4 is the site plan for the Aston North Phase 1. The applicant requests the city approve the site plan for the Aston North Phase 1 located at 700 East 900 South in the PD 34 zone. So similar to our previous one, you can see on the zoning map it is enclosed within the PD 34 zone area with a little plop of commercial in there. And then on the right, you can see the aerial view, and you can also see its proximity to Aston South. So they're just continuing that development north. Here's the overall site plan. Similar to Aston South, it'll have the same kind of U shape going on. Here is level 1. You can see that they have some retail in there as well as a fitness gym for an amenity. There will also be some garages on the main floor that will be maintained for people living there. Here are the upper levels. You can see that really the main difference is just that instead of retail and garages, they have more units. Here is your typical unit, but like the residences and all of their other buildings, they have a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. Here's the landscaping plan, similar to Aston South as well. And this is the proposed transportation changes that will be made on 800 East. The 900 South access will be added from the Aston side. And because of this addition, there is some concern about the safety of making left turns from both sides of 900 South there. And so the city is proposing to make the entrance to the Aston a right in and right out, and then the entrance and exit from the neighborhoods will be a right out only, but a right and left in. There has been some discussion between the neighborhoods and the Aston, as well as our engineering department, on whether there might be a safe alternative for the neighbors to make a left out, but right now that is still kind of up in the air. Because of these changes in the roads, we asked the Woodburys to hold a neighborhood meeting, which they did, even though they were not required to. And so here you can just see the letter that they sent out, letting neighbors know about the meeting, and then there are the minutes there on the right. And most of the questions were about this transportation entrance and exit. So the Development Review Committee has determined that this request complies with the Orem City Code. Staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the site plan for Aston North Phase 1, located at 700 East, 900 South in the PD 34 zone, on the condition that Orem City Engineering can determine if the neighborhood's preferred option of a left out is a safe option.
Okay. Can you go back to the map, the intersection?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's discuss that just a little bit more. Okay, can you just review this and maybe, yeah, let's just review this real quick. Can you point exactly where the changes are going to be on here?
Yes, so there is going to be a median added through here, as well as one along here that will prevent people from making a left out or making a left into the Aston. There has been some discussion about whether or not it would be possible to have a lane that comes through here where you can then merge into the road. Engineering is still working on determining whether or not that'll be safe. But then also this whole entrance right here is new. And so you can see that they're adding the little wedge that will make it a right in and right out only.
Okay. Any questions or
Yes.
concerns or discussion?
Yeah, just a question. They're just on this north phase of the Aston. Is the whole thing going to be built? As we saw on the site plan, which is one back from here, that it's just that 700 east to like 750 east.
So right now, the one building is, as far as they have gotten, they're still working on how they want to plan out the rest of the area.
Okay.
And so they will need to come back for site plan approval once they move on to there.
On the east side of that. So the city would like them to do the intersection now?
Yes.
Okay. That was all. Just wondering on that.
Okay. Is the applicant here? You come up and state your name again.
Chris Longston again, and we're here to answer questions. But after we had that neighborhood meeting, the neighbors were very concerned about wanting to make a left out there, and they had met with Paul, and we've talked to Paul, and if it's possible, we're supportive of it. We're okay with just the right in, right out on our side. If the protective left coming out will work engineering wise, we're in full support of the neighborhood and the request. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
This is not a public hearing. Is it okay if I can ask? Is there any residents here that have any concerns with this that may be living in that neighborhood? No.
Okay.
Okay. I'll bring it back to the Planning Commission. I think it looks good. I think that condition is worthy of. It shows that the Woodburys are willing to work with engineering and try to accommodate the residents as long as it's safe. So I think we should make a motion. I guess I can go ahead and make an attempt to make this motion.
Oh.
Okay. Let's see here.
Aston North.
So this is a recommendation.
No.
Actually,
It's an approval.
This is an approval.
yeah, can I just make a comment
Yeah.
here? Just maybe on the language here. I mean, the language here says that it's the approval is made on the condition engineering can determine if the neighborhood option is a safe option. I would modify that just a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say that the motion to approve it would be conditioned upon the developer constructing the intersection improvements according to what engineering ultimately determines is the correct configuration as far as the left turns. But the approval is not conditioned upon engineering determining it. It's just that they agree to do the construction of the intersection according to what engineering says. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have time to write that down, so I'm going to try to remember what we just talked about here. Okay. All right, let's see here.
So we're going to approve it.
Yeah, so let's see here. Okay, I make motion that we approve the Ashton North Phase 1 site plan location at 700 East, 900 South in the PD 34 zone with the
Just the condition that the developer construct the intersection improvements according to what transportation engineering ultimately decides for regarding the left turns.
So with the condition that the developer agrees to construct a safe
the intersection
intersection of improvements excuse me,
Required by.
as required.
If you want to just adopt what I said, that's okay too.
Yes, let's just do that. Okay. Can I have a second?
Second, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the next item is a public hearing.
So the next two items have not been scheduled until 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
So
7 minutes.
Okay.
a 10-minute recess.
We'll take a break. Yeah, let's go through the minutes.
They were.
All right.
It's right at the very end.
Yeah, if I can get there. All right.
I'm not there yet either.
So I was not here last meeting, so if, they looked good to me.
Yeah, they seemed right.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion that, is anybody willing to make a motion on the minute?
You want to do it?
I'll do it. I make a motion that we approve the minutes from our previous meeting, January 17th, 2018.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Ross seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any? Nope, that's it.
That's that took like a minute. We could have argued over them.
Yeah, we could have.
They just want to. They will re-adjourn here. For those of you that just came in, the 5 o'clock is the official start of the public hearing for the next two items. Correct? And so we'll just kind of hang out until 5 o'clock.
Okay, we'll go ahead and continue our meeting. This item 4.1, which is a public hearing. Go ahead.
Item 4.1 regards the rezone of an area of 8.89 acres, generally at 782 West, 2000 South, from an OS5, which is an open space zone, to R8, which is a low-density residential. So here you can see both the current zoning map as well as the requested zoning map. Once again, it's going from open space 5, which is a mixture of agricultural or just rural density, to a low density residential. Here is the proposed subdivision. Everywhere, well, I will just show you. So everywhere within here is what is being considered rezoned, even though, for example, the GRU property will not be subdividing right now. They will just be getting rezoned. We feel this is a pretty straightforward thing, and so we have found that it complies with all city codes, and we recommend the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to amend Section 2253A and the zoning map of Orem City by changing the zone on the 8.89 acres from OS5 to R8, generally at 782 West, 2000 South.
Okay. Any questions from the Planning Commission?
No, not on that.
No. Okay. This is a public hearing, so if anybody would like to share any thoughts or concerns on this item, may come forth. If you do come forth, you can you have to state your name and where the residence where you live, and I would just say just keep it to the 3 minutes and to keep it from repetition, if we can. State your name.
My name is Richard Wilkerson. I live at 1905 South Laguna Vista Drive in Orem, Utah. I'd like to talk about this land. I gave you a handout there.
Yep.
This land is excellent food growing land, and it's some of the best that we have in the state of Utah. On the handout I gave you, there's an insert. There's a letter with a picture, first of all, and the audience has a picture like this as well. Shows the products that this area produces. And it's a highly productive food growing area. There's very few areas in the state of Utah that are like this. The reason it's like this is because it's on the far side of the Provo River Delta. And sandbars were laid over there, and this area is one of those sandbars. And it's turned into sandy loam soil, which is the best food-producing soil that we have. We don't have many of these kind of spots in Utah. I think Provo River is probably the largest river in Utah, other than the Colorado, and that's not here. Because we don't have very many of these places, we need to preserve them for food growing. Now, I know that we need housing as well. But there's many places that we can put housing. But there's not very many places in this state that we can grow food like this place can. And we can't afford to lose this kind of soil and territory because we have so little of it. The owners want to sell, and they have a right to do that. But it becomes our responsibility as community members to make sure that places like this is preserved for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who will be needing places to grow food. We're not sure that there will always be imported food like we have now, and it's an insecure food source. But if we have land, we will always have food. If we don't have land, we'll be subject to whatever whims come along. The community should secure this land so the citizens will have a secure food source and not have to rely on food from some other place, which may or may not be available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheet for you guys.
Oh, sure, bring it up. If it doesn't have real raspberries with it, don't bring it. Okay.
State your name, city of resident.
My name is Richard Wilkerson Jr., number 2, and I live in Orem at 1905 South Laguna, same as my dad's address there. But I am the younger guy that's running the farm right next to the Browns. And first of all, this farm...
Where's your farm?
This we run the Wilkerson farm right next to the Brown property there, under Candide Charitable. And we were able to get a guy who paid $4 million to secure that land all by himself, which was good of him. But we're going to need a little bit of help to secure any more, because how often can we count on that to show up a miracle like that? Well, the Browns are good people, and these people have the right to develop their land, and I agree with that. And in fact, if it weren't for the Browns playing their part, that farm that we're running probably wouldn't be there even right now. It'd probably be in townhomes. So I thank those guys for their help and for all the help we've got from the community. But we're doing this for the community so that they can have something nice here in Orem before it's all gone. And in the sheet we show you there, it kind of shows you some of the things we would like to do. And we're hoping to do that. But we're going to need some help, like I say, because can't come up with $2 million every time a piece needs to be saved. And there ain't very many pieces left. We have about a handful in the city. You can count them, Crandall's and Jack Hansen's, and there's just a very few left. And we want to try to save some of those guys, because some of those guys are getting to be 80, 85 years old. They're going to be gone soon. And their land has to divide to the descendants like they always do. Right now, they only have one option, and that's to develop. And there's no other option, because the USDA, you can think about them for a minute, all they offer is, for a farmer, is $300,000. That's the maximum on their loan to purchase farmland. And that was written probably back in the 80s, so that's way outdated. So we need some local help, and that's what I'm going to request a recommendation to the City Planning Commission, also the Council. If we can, for the future here, we may not save the Browns, they may want to develop, and that's okay. But if we can find a way to save some of these farms that are going to be coming up here soon with these 90-year-old farmers, if we can find a way to help fund them, and maybe that looks something like a person who wants to farm comes up with 90% of the money, $1 million, and maybe the city chips in $100,000 to help secure that farmland for the city. And so I'm recommending to you guys and hoping that you guys will pass that information on. We can save a little bit of these last farms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
My name is Byron Taylor. I live at 1785 South Geneva Road. One of our parcels is 20 acres. It's very close to this area. This is my concern. It wasn't that long ago that we were here after protracted many meetings. We agreed to a plan. And I think the OS5 was put in there to appease those of us who will plan on farming. We have a conservation easement on our property in perpetuity, so that we are committed to long-term farming. I think the OS5 was an appeasement to those of us who want to continue to farm. It's a concern to me that this quickly we are coming right back, okay, OS5, we want to go denser. I'm very concerned about the density of the area. Getting onto Geneva Road now is a task. We have what is intermediate development going right now with the fields. This adds to the density. I'm just very concerned about the density, and are we really planning with a long-term objective, or do we shove a plan in so that you can annex us and then turn right around and change the zoning so that plan means nothing this soon? We kind of know it's going to happen that way, but this soon, it's really a concern to me that the planning really doesn't mean anything other than to get us annexed so that we can then go ahead, make it denser, and continue on with the development. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bob Fleiger. I live at 642 West 580 South in Orem, just north of UVU. I've got a son that lives right across the road from this, and I don't see a conflict of interest. I think you can have the farm and the houses both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenny Yancey. I actually live at 1261 North 580 West, but my family owns an orchard about 650 East 150 North, and our family used to own where this building is. I just want to say that I'm not against housing. Obviously I live in one and it's great and in a neighborhood, but just how hard it is to have, like this gentleman said, the houses and the farms. It actually is really hard. Our entire orchard, it's one of the last few here, and it's completely surrounded. Most of you probably don't even know where it's there. It's been there for hundreds of years, well, probably over 100 years or so, you know what I mean? And it goes from almost 200 north to Center Street, and almost 400 east to almost 800 north, or 400 north to 800 north. And you would never know it's there because it's completely surrounded by houses, which is fine, but just the problem that causes every time we fertilize. We use cow manure just the problems that causes with the houses that don't like it. You know, the smell. We get people out constantly to monitor to make sure it's, you know, within codes, or every time we want to spray, and we spray very minimally, and just all the different things. And so my, I guess, suggestion is just once the farms are gone, they're gone. They're never going to come back. And just how hard it is to, there definitely needs to be a checks and balance, but just it is difficult to have both in the same area at the same time. It makes it really hard for us, you know, to provide a product that the community wants, but it's just hard. I guess that's my thing. And so I guess just consider, you know, how dense they're getting around those areas. And thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll close the public hearing. Is the applicant here? Can you come up? Because I'm sure you've had plenty of conversation. And
Tyrell Gray with Millhaven Homes. We hear the applicant.
You have anything to add? Or?
Just that, it's tough to say, honestly. First time in my life I've ever been tongue-tied. I grew up on a farm. I actually still own a little hobby farm. Matter of fact, the reason I say it's hard that I'm tongue-tied, I always talk. I can remember herding cows with my dad and having him look at me and say, "Boy, if you had to keep your mouth shut for 5 seconds, your tongue beat your brain to death." This is a tough one. We love farming. We love Utah. We're a developer by trade. This is an area that's calling for development. There's a high demand for these properties. It fits well with the area. It was recommended by the staff as the reason we're asking for this zoning. It fits with what's across the street. There's a high demand for it, and as everybody's mentioned, it's a beautiful place. The farms that are there are one reason why people want to be there. The farm that's directly to the east of the property is in a conservation easement, which will be there forever. People want to be able to have houses where they can have open space right next to them. It is a highly desirable area. We're very excited about it, and we think it adds to the beauty and opportunities for people to live in the state of Utah and have great places in the city of Orem. Any questions that I can answer for the staff?
Anything there?
Does anybody want to turn this into a farm?
I would be willing to sell this to anybody for $4 million if they want to turn it into a farm.
I mean, that's the basic problem, right? It's
Yeah,
too
that
expensive
is a problem.
farming.
Unfortunately.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll bring it back to the Planning Commission. I want to thank those who shared their thoughts. There's definitely a community helps the city make decisions, and as a planning commission, as a body of a planning commission here, we can send a recommendation to city council, but city council will make the final decision on this change. Does any of the staff members have any questions or concerns that we haven't touched, or?
Maybe just a comment to maybe clarify some of the background on this. You know, back when the city annexed this, we refer to it as the Southwest Annexation Area. There was a general plan that was adopted as part of that kind of designated what types of uses, whether they were medium density residential or light industrial, things like that. Maybe Mr. Bench could speak to that in more detail if he wants to. He may even have a map he can pull up that shows that. But there was a comment made about the OS5 zone which basically requires a 5-acre minimum parcel. That was adopted essentially as a holding zone, if you will. But it was never intended that area be kept in OS5, except for those areas that are, conservation easement that will never be developed, as was also mentioned. The idea was that OS5 zone would stay in place until developers were ready to come forward and develop the property in accordance with the general plan. And again, the general plan typically called for medium density residential, as I recall, and light industrial for the most part in those areas.
Yeah, light industrial on the east of Geneva Road, and then industrial on the west. So this is R8 is in line with the low density residential designation.
I guess I was going to mention this proposed R8 zone is probably actually of a lower density than was contemplated by that general plan that was adopted, just for maybe the background information that might benefit those in the audience.
But it was contemplated with a mix of medium and low, but actually when the council adopted it, it was all low density on the west.
Low density.
East side.
On the east side, okay.
On the east side.
And how long ago was that?
I'm going to say 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
2015, I believe.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or concerns? Mike, you have a thought?
I always have a thought. That's the unfortunate thing. You know, when I moved to Orem, back to Orem 33 years ago, behind me there was nothing but orchards all the way to 800 North. And so there was nothing there to interfere with the occasional moose, deer, and other things. It's all developed now. That was the old Stratton farm. I'm sure, Mr. Wilkerson, that you recall that orchard and those farms up in there. Nice places. And we live in what the Utah State University calls a gravelly loam area, unless you try to put a shovel in it. And then that gravel is, watermelon size, some of it. But it sure grows good. My garden is wonderful. I understand the idea of open space and farming. And I have no doubt about what this property will produce that, either in small home gardens, or if someone were to come in to take the piece to keep it as open space, it would be a larger garden. But my understanding is this is all in compliance. If we make the recommendation, everything is in compliance so to do. Okay?
Are we ready to make a motion?
Who wants to do this one?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, you want to give this a shot?
I'll try, yeah. I will make a motion that we, let's see, we're sending a recommendation.
Yeah, forward.
Send a positive recommendation to the City Council to amend Section 22-5-3A in the zoning map of Orem City by changing the zone on 8.89 acres from the OS5 zone to the R8 zone, generally at 782 West, 2000 South.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item 4.2, which is also a public hearing. Go ahead.
Item 4.2 is a general plan amendment for the Strawberry Fields development. The applicant requests the city change the general plan designation for the 10.9 acre properties located generally at 800 East Timpanogos Parkway from professional services to low density residential. That's not good. Well, on the left is the current zoning map, and on the right you can still see the important parts. You can see that it changes from professional services to low density residential. Here is the proposed site plan. This is not what you guys are voting on, but it's just to give you an idea of what they're planning. They've got townhomes on the western side and single family on the east. Again, not what you're voting on, but to give you an idea, here are the similar style homes that they are proposing for the area. So here are some advantages and disadvantages from staff. One of the advantages is that planned residential developments provide a segment of housing that has proven to be in high demand in the city. The development proposed by the applicant appears to be an attractive product that is supported by many of the residential neighbors to the south. Some disadvantages are that this encroaches into an established office development without a comprehensive study of the existing business park and a potential redevelopment plan. The general plan amendment and subsequent rezone seems premature to staff, and we do have some concerns about the unplanned nature of this. Also, converting the property to low-density residential would prevent the property from being used for office and technology uses like those in the Canyon Park development. These uses generate substantial benefits to the city in terms of tax revenue and job creation. So staff recommends the Planning Commission consider forwarding a recommendation to the City Council to change the general plan designation for the 10.9 acre properties located generally at 800 East Timpanogos Parkway from professional services to low density residential.
Okay, so we are going to forward a recommendation, whether we
You can decide if it's going to be a positive recommendation
or negative recommendation. So staff, city does not want to put. I can imagine why. Okay, or we can just be neutral.
I guess theoretically, if you wanted to, you could.
Okay.
And go nowhere.
And go nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Well, go to the council.
Yeah. It has to go to the council anyway. Okay, so this is the applicant here. You come on up. State your name and
Me here or here?
whichever you like. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Paul Washburn. I'm representing the applicant this evening. I wonder if before we answer any specific questions about the request, I'd like to rehearse some of the history of the research park that I think maybe put our request in a little better context. Back in 1985, I was actually elected to the City Council in Orem, had the privilege to serve a term then. It was at that point in time that Orem City decided to invest in the research park. Circumstances around that, in 1985, the country, and particularly our area, was suffering from a real economic collapse. All the savings and loans in the country had gone under a couple of years before. Our main source of income in the valley was Geneva Steel. It was shuttered at that particular point in time, and the City Council was very anxious to see if they could provide some other kind of employment opportunities and find a way to broaden the base of employment opportunities both within the city and within the county. We came upon the idea of doing a business research park and did a fair amount of research at the time to see what people were looking for at that time, how one would be developed. Back then, I think Darrell Berlin was the city manager. He hired a consultant that went around the country. He actually made a number of trips. We met with all the big names at the time: Bell Labs, Kodak, Bell & Howell, Polaroid, Jackson Labs, and a number of others. Most of them, the thing they have in common is most of them are not in business anymore. At that particular time, the model for a business park was to try and find something at the edge of a residential area, close to a university. Universities were then going to partner with the employer to try and come up with new products or new technology that then they would be able to take to market. Fortunately, after we built the business park, WordPerfect, a local company, Blossom, came in and bought the majority of the park and built out the buildings that for the most part are there now. Number of things have changed since that happened. Most technology companies now want to be in immediate proximity of the freeway. One of the reasons we picked that site was because it was not next to the freeway and as far away as we could physically get people from Geneva Steel, which at that time was a real impediment to trying to get companies to locate here. But that's changed now. People want that freeway proximity, and that seems to be a big part of why companies want to locate here. The park has probably, I guess best word to say, has struggled since WordPerfect was acquired by other companies and has gone away. It's worked out probably fairly well as a business incubator, but has not seen a way to be a final home for any of the companies that have been there and fact, probably less so as time goes on. Currently, the park has about 40% vacancy, extremely low rents, and even with that, we're having a difficult time attracting people. Back in 1996, the owners of the park at that time saw the decline coming and approached the city about the idea of opening up a wider variety of uses within the park. And they were looking at some things like restaurant, maybe a small convenience store, bookstore, office supplies, some things they felt like would blend with that environment and maybe make it a more attractive site. That was not something that was accepted well by the neighbors, and I don't think it went any further than the first neighborhood meeting the city called. Clearly, the neighborhood did not want to see that happen. Since then, the park has kind of limped along. The two properties that we are looking at rezoning or remaster planning at this point, let me be clear about that, have been available and actively marketed since 1987. After 30 years, it's fairly obvious there doesn't seem to be a strong demand for that. Other factors have gone into play. Geneva still no longer is there. It's not to say that companies are not willing to come to Orem, but they're wanting to locate down by the freeway, areas that are closer to transportation corridors, and gives them much closer proximity to other companies that they like to have. It's interesting. I look at the site on 16th North Research Park, and to me, it doesn't seem like it's that far away until I have to drive there. And the streets really aren't designed for rapid transit there. We're going through residential areas. It's not impossible, but it certainly doesn't offer the advantages of the corridor that I-15 provides. The owners of the research park have spent probably the last 3 years trying to find different ways to revitalize the park, and I believe they have got plans to find ways to make the buildings that exist more attractive to tenants, but I believe that they have correctly assessed the idea that it would expand and that there was a good opportunity to bring new tenants, build more buildings at the rates that would have to rent at the rates that are competitive to get the financing. It just doesn't seem to be practical at all. We have met with the neighborhood extensively. They seem to be in strong support of having this style of housing put in the neighborhood. And we believe as we look long term, this probably makes the most sense for this property. And I'd be glad to answer any questions for you if you'd like.
Thank you, Paul. That was a great recap of the history of the property and what's going on. So you're saying that there is 40% vacancy about right now?
Yeah.
Because when we met about this, how long ago was that? It was somewhere where it was about 20 to 25% vacancy, if I understood it right.
Well, we go from bad times to worse times. Occasionally it gets back to bad times, but
yeah.
That's essentially where it is. It's too bad. I wish we had some kind of a magic gun. We could pick it up and drop it down on 8th North and I-15 or another location, but it is where it is.
Yeah.
And it's just not working where it is.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Paul, you mentioned that it was actively, the property that we're talking about was actively marketed for the past 30 years?
Yeah.
These actual sites?
Yes. There's no
signs on there?
They have had different realtors working on it, the people that work on managing the entire site. This is not the kind of ground you just sit on forever. They've wanted to develop it. It's just been trying to find a tenant that made sense to develop it. Again, the park has been through several financial readjustments. It's a nice way of saying takeovers.
Yeah. Upside down.
Rents are typically less than half of what you would find in the regular corridor. They're having difficulty filling the space they have. It doesn't make sense to build new space. Hasn't made sense for new tenants to want to build new space that would have to pay the higher debt service.
So as a technology park.
Excuse me?
As a technology park, it is not desirable.
Changed.
Doesn't work.
In 1987, we we picked a winner,
Yeah.
and we lost. It's interesting. The same time we did this, we did all the master planning for 1300 South. There's not a business that's located on 13th South that even existed when we did the planning. As a council, we gave it our best shot, and on 13th South, I think we really got lucky, got very lucky. It worked. The research park, I think we probably had better data, better support, better information, but it was at a day the world changed, and we missed.
Yep. Yep, when they didn't go to a graphical user interface,
yeah,
they died.
Yeah.
That's a little history there. Word perfect.
I've got a question about the property just south, so directly south of the larger plot. There's a...
Pull it up on the map, make sure I'm...
Next
This
one.
right there,
One.
Christine. Yeah, the one where the building is.
I think it says Lot 1, Plat C. There's a building there. Yeah, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, and then I guess as it swings to the east, is there a possibility of including that portion into the development?
We don't own that building, I don't believe, and they seem to be glad to
It's
keep
not a vacant,
God,
you know?
The economics of trying to develop new buildings on the empty spaces and the economics of taking down an existing building and converting it to another use aren't the same.
Yeah. Right.
I think that's called the constrained optimization of productivity.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. I understand that. I'm just curious if there's a way to make this so that we're not wrapping neighborhoods around buildings.
Well, I think if you saw a larger map there, they've really got good proximity to 800 East.
They do.
I don't think it's as isolated as it may appear from this. I don't think we've got a Google Earth, do we?
800.
That's
800 is right here on the side.
Yeah.
So you can see it does go right. Timpanogos goes right into 800 East.
Right. I'm very familiar with this area. I drive past it twice a day.
Okay.
Yes.
But I'm just curious, as I went back into there, it seems like we're kind of isolating a little section of the business park into the middle of the neighborhood. So.
And I think that's why staff would like to see a master plan of the area before rezone. Just to be clear, we're not necessarily against this ever being residential ever. We just have concerns about the unplanned nature of the development.
Right. What do you think about the master plan idea of looking at?
I think we could sit down and we could draw a picture. I think it probably would have as much relevance 20 years from now as the plan we did for the research park to begin with. I think it's fairly clear we don't have large undeveloped areas in there. We've got existing structures. They're going to continue to operate until a point in time comes when it makes more sense to take them down and do something else. At that point in time, they come to the city and the planning commission and they make a judgment based on what's happening then. If we had a large area of undeveloped space, or we had absolute predictability that buildings A through M had a 10-year lifespan and the others 15 or whatever, I think trying to do a master plan would make some sense. But right now, it would be just a wild guess. I don't know that I see there's any benefit to it. Sounds good, but I don't think there's much benefit. It is what it is.
What's there in that white space south of Phase 2 and east of Phase 1? There's a building on that. In that.
Yes, I believe all pieces that you can see have buildings on them, other than the two we're looking at developing.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed. I live there, basically.
Yeah.
And I can't remember where the buildings are. So there's one building, I can't point. Right between the corner between Phase 1 and Phase 2, there's a building there on that spot, right? Phase 1's in that open field?
They're both open fields.
Yeah, Phase 1, and I know Phase 2's an open field. I walked through that one. And so there's a building in the space between Phase 1 and Phase 2, and then over there toward 8th East, that's another building?
I believe that's correct. If I'm understanding you correctly, yes.
Maybe I'll find one.
Trying to get a better picture to look at.
So here you can see both phases.
Yeah, okay.
And the reason phase 2 looks different here is because the property line actually runs through the parking lot. So they would also take about half of that parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so Paul, maybe just if you could just stay there. Is that okay? Let's have you stay there for a minute.
Thank you.
Do you need any water, coffee, hot chocolate, or you good?
I'm good.
Oh, okay. Sounds
it's
good.
a long time, maybe dinner, but right now.
All right. This is a public hearing. We'd like to invite the public to come up to the podium. I would just say, state your name, the city of residence, and keep it to 3 minutes. And if somebody's already shared some thoughts, that the same exact thoughts, just keep it very minimal. We want to let everybody have an opportunity. So go ahead.
Hi, my name is Diane Fraser. My address is 592 East, 1200 North. I live right across the street from Building Q. So I've walked my dogs through here tons of times. I think this is a great idea. You have the Da Vinci Place, which is already, it's on that very south, the south end with all the little, the house is right there. Da Vinci Place is right there. The kind of southeast part would be like an extension of the Da Vinci Place, and then you'd have that section off of 800 East. I think it would be perfect. You'd be getting taxes from the people who move in there and have the houses there, and these lots have been there empty for. When we moved into our house, it was still an orchard across the street. We knew there was going to be buildings there, but and when they put the Da Vinci Place in, we thought that was a great idea. And I think that, again, this is another great idea. If those properties are sitting there empty and they're not going to be used, I think this is a great way to fill that up. And I'm excited about this. I think it would be great.
Thank you.
And I hope that if you haven't gone and looked at it, if you go there and you look, it just feels like it would be the right thing to do there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Logan Harris, and we own the building there at 720 Timpanogos Parkway. Okay. That's the building that is being surrounded by the residential planning. So there's a couple of things. What I'd like to make a point of is that we are a new business that came to the area, and we particularly, we were a tenant, first of all, at Canyon Park. We grew, and we looked all the way from Lehigh down to Salem for a place to be. And we had all the options, and we chose this place because of its proximity to BYU. It gets a 15-minute drive. We can hire interns from BYU. We can hire anyone we want, and it's a very quick drive, so we can have people that are working part-time. And it's also close to the freeway. It's about 6 minutes drive off the freeway, so it's not terrible. And 1600 North isn't too bad, so getting our employees there hasn't been a problem. And we were a tenant at the Canyon Park for about, it was about 4 years. About 4 years, we were a tenant. To get into the Canyon Park, we had to call the management every single week for 2 months before we were able to get a lease. It was like they didn't want to lease it to us. So I'm questioning, one, that this is a bad spot for business because we're there. Other people would be there if it was easier to do business in that area. The reason they have 40%, well, maybe. 25%. Well, it might be 25%, depends on the month, right? Because last year we were here before, and they were saying they had, great occupancy and things were going good, and so they didn't want that plot that's just kind of there to the north of the 720 space, that like 2.5 acre space there. They didn't want that to be developed, and now we're hearing something entirely different today. So this is really different for us. So one, it is a great place for business. We are proof that we're going to bring business to this area. And one, if you change this from a commercial zoned location, then the future environment of this area is growing. Orem is growing, Provo is growing, Lehigh is growing, and it's being grown by high-tech companies. And you're going to see a lot more business here in the next few years. If you keep it as commercial, if you put it in low-density residential, your revenues are going to decrease. If it's rezoned, then the commercial property there, the 720 Timpanogos Parkway area there, its value is going to decrease. Has it been 3 minutes already?
It has.
Okay.
Got 20 seconds.
Okay, 28 seconds then. I'd also like to make a point out that in the City Code 22-15, it is lawful for anyone who is not a property owner or even the city to request a change in zoning to avoid the creation of an island or a peninsula. And that's what's happening. It's almost an island, but it's definitely a peninsula that's being created by surrounding that commercial space with residential.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Nope. Thank you. You lost 28 seconds. No.
My name is Gloribel, and I'm here, and I'm very surprised because we were here a few months ago, and it was approved unanimously that this wasn't a good idea. Also, I'm surprised because according to the laws that we have right now, it would be unlawful to do this. So I'm surprised about this hearing. But I also want to say that we were, a business that was incubated in the business park, and then we decided to be here. Also, I have lived in that area really close because I walk to work, and for about 25 years, and I haven't seen a for sale sign or these 2 lots being actively marketed. In fact, when we bought our building, we had to go to the owner because that was just to be rented for businesses. So we had to go to the owner and buy it that way. So when we bought this building, we were buying in a commercial place. The neighbors that are around, when they built the homes there, they knew they were building next to a commercial zone. In the master plan was as a commercial zone. It feels like it's going backwards to get something that it's sometimes so hard to zone commercial to go back to residential. And like I tell you, I have lived there for about 25 years. There hasn't been a single sign selling either lot. So it hasn't really been marketed. There was a sign that it was for, subleasing, but not, selling it. The streets, this was designed in the master plan, so the streets are designed for that commercial park there. Let's see. Has some of my notes. So when we decided to locate our business there, we decided on that spot because it's in a commercial business park that can be if they maybe have a different management company, that can be a booming place because we are a very high-tech business. And we like that proximity because also people, from the U could even come here, and people from UVU, people from BYU, and it would be a lot closer to them than, let's say, going to Lehigh or another place like that one. Okay. And, to buy a place that is commercial, imagine if it was your own investment that you bought it because of the laws that were there. And then all of a sudden, we've been there about 2 years, and they want to decrease, the value of that property by zoning it residential. When you make, your decision, you did it on being commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Dockendorf. I live in Da Vinci, lot number 2. We moved there in 2009. Prior to that, we lived over by Northridge Elementary School. We watched this whole development of all the hills, up on the hills and all the things. And actually, we went when they were proposing Research Park to be constructed, and Word Perfect was probably one of the tenants. We went to the public hearings to kind of see that. So we've watched the removal, the changes that have gone on with the agricultural area to this, but I'm in favor. My wife is here too. She would speak the same, but she has her own voice. But we are in favor of this development. Rick Chatwin has been an excellent home builder and builds good quality properties. I understand the concerns raised by the business that's behind us, and I fully understand what they're saying. But I still feel that those developments, and to make a point clear, I've lived in this area since 1980, and I have seen properties for sale signs on these properties many times. They go up and come down and go up and come down. So there has been efforts to actually try to sell those properties previously. But again, I know that the quality of the homes that Rick builds, and I do know that he would do a good job, and we are in favor of this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. There's quite a few of you here. Please share your thoughts.
Joseph Walker, 677 East, 1220 North in Da Vinci Place. I'm the HOA president. When we heard about this project, we held a neighborhood meeting among ourselves. All of those that attended, we have a list of them, and every person approved this particular project as a good one to go forth. A couple of things that might be helpful. Number one, I've lived there for 11 years, and there have been signs on those properties to sell. I've seen the signs. I've talked to David Smart when he was trying to sell them, and I think it's important that we understand that. I agree with, I thought Mr. Washburn gave you a very good synopsis. It's your decision now to move forward with what information you have available. I think it's very important that a couple of things be clear. Number one is the tax revenue that you're receiving right now is minimal compared to what you would have if this property were developed into low density residential. It's a prime area for that. I think it's also important, you might know that R.F. Spotter, who is the owner of the building that is in question right here, has been using the property adjacent to them that they want to develop now for the last 2 years for their experimental procedures. They have even built scaffolding on that property in order to perform their tests without ever checking with Mr. Chatwin, who's been the owner this last year. So I can see why they would want to keep that property, because that's a good place for them to continue their testing without any expense. This area it's interesting to me that we passed this before and put Da Vinci Place in where it is. There's your island right there, if you want an island. And this would enhance that whole area as a residential area. And the discussion here has been right on. The technology corridor is not going to be here. It's going to be by the freeway and in that area there. We need to make sure that we develop what we can here in a sane and wise way. Thank you.
Thank you.
just have a minute and have to leave. So, but my name is Calvin Candlin. I actually live next to Joe Walker at 665 East, 1220 North on Da Vinci. And I will only add that I can attest that Mr. Chatwin builds beautiful homes, and I think those homes would be a credit to the area.
Thank you.
Tyrell Gray with Millhaven Homes. Just want to give a quick economic data input if we can. We have a project that we've just completed just north of this in Linden. We did a very similar product to what Mr. Chatwin built, and it went faster than we could build it. We also have the same situation that we're building a commercial project right now in Linden, and we're in trouble on it. We can't get it sold. The issue that we're having, as was mentioned, there's a ton of growth that's coming into Utah, technology companies, the Silicon Slopes, if you will, but they're all wanting to be up by Cabela's. That's the competition that we're up against with our commercial project, and we're having a hard time. From our perspective, Mr. Chatwin does build a beautiful product. I mean, this seems like an obvious solution to a problem that's been existing for years. Frankly, it's one I wish I'd been able to purchase if you guys approve it. But I do think it does fit the area.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Chatterley. The street address is 684 East, 1200 North. So our home is just south of the Da Vinci development. My career is in commercial civil engineering and general construction. While we've lived here for 5 years, much of my experience has been much of what Rick Catlin is doing, and that's rezoning for property. It's been my observation and experience as a civil engineer that this is a good and correct development, and the zoning for low R8 density is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick, would you like to come up? You've been called out quite a bit.
My name is Rick Chatwin. I live in Penny Lane in Orem, another development that I did 6 years ago, and then I built Peach Lane shortly after that. And like you heard before, we built those and we couldn't build them fast enough. We had a lot of excitement in purchasing those properties, and this is exactly the same development that we're going to put here in these two projects. I tried this a little bit over a year ago, and as you can see, I'm serious about it. I'm here again. I appreciate all the comments, everybody talking about how well we build homes, and Carlos knows I built his.
Yeah.
And thanks for the time.
My name's Scott McQuarrie. I represent the office park. And it's true that we have tried for the last 17 years to find a use for this 8 acres and also the land that's now Da Vinci. And we just couldn't find anybody that wanted a new product. The cost was just too high. We also liked another alternative, which was to do high density housing there. Since there are several thousand employees that work at the park, it'd be wonderful to build some residential, affordable residential for those that work there. There was not a lot of enthusiasm for that on the part of either the city or the neighbors. So after additional contemplation, we decided on this single-family usage. It has low impact. There's already trees around the perimeter of the property. As we thought about it, we didn't think it would have a negative impact on the office, because we still care about keeping the office full and making that a good, productive project. But by just doing mainly 1 story and maybe an occasional 2-story building in there, visually it pretty much disappears as you drive by it, and we don't think it has a negative impact because of that on the on the rest of the park and our ability to lease it up. We're never going to be able to compete with the high-priced, nice buildings along the freeway. There's always a place for Class B office. You just want to keep it looking nice and have it integrate nicely into the neighborhood. And you know, we're always trying to make money and do the best we can, and we would have rather have done something that was higher density. But after, again, working with the city and with the neighborhood, we thought this was the best route to take. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sherry Page. I live at 636 East, 1280 North in Da Vinci. And I guess all I have to add is I think it would be a great benefit to us to have, you know, those empty lots filled and bringing revenue to the city. And I agree, Rick Chatwin builds wonderful homes. So, you know, I'm all for it, that we develop that land, get some revenue from it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll close the public hearing.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
I just want to share a couple of thoughts. I normally don't conduct this meeting, so I may have done some things maybe unorthodox by calling people out, because I really want to hear what the residents are feeling. And I can see both sides of you know, the city side and of course the resident side. And when we go back a year ago when we discussed this, we talked about the vacancy situation. It wasn't as bad as it is. I am surprised that it's gotten a little bit worse. And maybe building or maybe changing the master plan. Is that what we're doing here? Yes.
We just done
the general plan.
Overall plan.
Overall plan.
For this property.
Maybe residential will bring, maybe help bring businesses, because we've tried for how long? It's been 30 years trying to develop this area and to get business in there. So bringing you back to the Planning Commission, any thoughts? Because we are going to make a recommendation or not a recommendation.
Or something.
Or nothing, yeah.
But it'd be good to hear your thoughts.
Well, I wish we had a crystal ball so you could know what would happen, but...
Give me a couple of years.
Between commercial and low density and high density, commercial it won't sell, and high density, I think low density residential is better. And I think I've been looking at the map, trying to figure out what it looks like, and except for it's not really a peninsula. You've got a road coming in there. You've got businesses on the left.
Yeah.
And then you've got some houses, and then the rest of the offices are to the west. I think it kind of makes sense to put low density in there.
Well, I look at Da Vinci, too, as kind of, you know, we talked about peninsula or island. It's more like the nose of the camel in the tent is what Da Vinci ends up being, too.
Yeah.
But without an overall plan, I just see we're doing the same thing that we've had problems with in the past in the city of Orem. And you just drive up and down State Street. We need to have some kind of an overall plan for that area. And I think that, Rick, you could probably work with the city. Scott, you can work with the city. If the landowners and the developers and things could sit down and we can develop a plan. Do we have an idea about how long that might take? Jason, any idea? I mean, yeah, to set something up so that it makes sense, that if we're going to go to low density, that we have a plan in place. About 3 months minimum. That's kind of the way I just hate seeing the hit and miss. You know, just
it's true.
This is a great project. No problem about Chatwin Homes. No problem about doing low density residential. But the idea is, we have a piece here and a piece here, and then we have these two commercial pieces over here, and we have the other commercial up here. We need to look to the future.
I'd just like to add, in regards to having a master plan for the area, if the master plan comes back saying that the best use for this area is low density residential, the city doesn't have a problem with that use. We just, again, we have concerns about not having a plan in place.
Yeah.
So, like you said, it's not against Chatwin, it's not against, having home.
No.
It's just, we just don't like things not being planned.
Yeah, and the Da Vinci development is really quite nice, and some of those other new developments around there. And as I mentioned before, I remember picking strawberries up there and tomatoes and moving irrigation pipe, doing a lot of different things when I was somewhat younger than I am now, which was only last year. No, but that's kind of where I'm leaning. Is we need to see an overall plan, and if it works out, I say Rick Chatwin, build the whole thing out.
What would be wrong with building let's say what would be wrong with having nice homes there?
Oh, nothing.
Nothing, right?
No, not a thing.
Okay, Mike.
It was mentioned that someone mentioned that it feels like homes would go there, and I drove through there this morning, and that was my thought, actually, and I agree with the neighborhoods that have already been done, that they look great in that area, and I don't know, but I do have the concern of a master plan. Can you pull up the map again, that Google map?
That zoning map?
So that we can kind of see and then zoom out a little bit so we can see where the business park kind of buffers all the neighborhood areas.
A lot of parking.
Yeah, a lot of parking. So that's basically a straight line on the west,
yeah,
the neighborhoods, and
on the right, except for the curve up on the top.
Yeah.
And we do have a mortuary down across the street on 800 North. We have the cemetery there. It just makes it so convenient, for those people.
So, Mike, you are a yay, nay?
You gonna make me decide?
No, I'm just asking. Ross is I think he's
leaning
towards.
Given what the place looks like, I think you can plan all you want, but you're still stuck with this chunk of land in here.
Yeah.
And I don't want high density in there. If somebody wants to make low density,
well,
lock it up.
Be R8, I think, is what we're looking at. Yeah. I'm sorry, PD8, correct? PRD.
Well, just some comments that I have about the study process. I mean, yeah, the R8 is great. I like R8, but the neighborhood that's next to me, there are a lot of people who decided to actually buy 1.5 or 2 lots or even 2.5 lots. And one of the things we could study is, do we want to have, for instance, the more larger lots where the people who might want to build out or come into the tech park have it's
mansion. It's the word you're looking
for. The McMansions, okay. And maybe and that's what we could compare, because right now we only have one thing to look at. But if we have a study, that's why staff made the recommendation, we really don't have anything to compare it to. So we could compare it to an R8 versus an R12 or whatever. We could also look at the tax benefits of the different proposals. We could look at how it lays out and if there's any peninsulas left. We could look at traffic issues. We could compare those kind of things. But right now, we just have no comparisons. So again, staff is thinking, yeah, as in this master plan, there's probably going to be some residential component, but exactly what is that?
Okay.
For instance, Christine, I don't know how hard it would be to go to the layout of that, the proposal of that property. One of the concerns I have is, you know, the way it's laid out there in phase 2, there's a street access that's extremely close to 800 East. That's really not a good idea. If you've got some businesses in the area and they're kind of flushing traffic out, you know, and having an access that close, we need to look at layouts of the subdivisions that might be more efficient. So there is again, when just kind of going over what staff's recommendations are and why we think there needs to be a study process, it's, yeah, residential might be the thing. And Jason suggested a minimum of 3 months, and we may come back at the end and say, yeah, this is it, but maybe we want to move the road here. And these are the comparisons, the tax base, is there a pocket park that's associated with some of the residential? Is there a, you know, that maybe both the people who are in the businesses can use during lunch times and break times, and maybe even the people in the area who are in the residential have a neighborhood pocket park. There's just so many things that we need to study before staff could give a recommendation. That's why we said we need to compare some things.
How long has staff had to look at this?
The application for this was submitted sometime in January, I believe.
Oh.
It should say on your staff report.
Okay.
But we discussed this. We discussed this a year ago, and the concern for me now is we're reliving this, and we still don't have a plan. And I'm wondering if we send a recommendation, maybe that'll accelerate something to happen. Because again, we're not making a decision. Obviously, our recommendation is, you know, is strongly considered. But I think the discussion points that everybody's made, and Paul Washburn and the residents, I mean, there's some good points there. You know, the land has been empty and stagnant for a long, long time. And then again, I step back, and as a resident, I love the project. Also, as a business, you know, running a business here in Orem, I want to see more businesses come in to help, you know, revenues not only in for me as, you know, in selling product, but also revenues for the city, because it helps minimize taxes. There is a difference in revenues on residential and commercial.
Yeah.
But it's a little frustrating that we're back here without a plan. It just hasn't been developed or discussed, and so at the expense of who, if we postpone it for 3 months.
So Bill and Jason can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that in the case of a master plan, it needs to be led by the owner of the property. It's not something that the city can just step in and say, hey, you know, you own this property, but we're going to come in and tell you what we think you should do with it.
Okay. Paul, did you? Sorry, Jason.
I don't want to belabor this, but I wonder if you could put the aerial back up. I understand the need for master planning, but if you look at this property, we don't have any vacant land that we're playing with. What we do have is we have some extremely large parking fields. At the point in time that WordPerfect developed this, they were going at 7 and 8 parking stalls per 1,000 feet, which is almost double the standard that the city currently has. Should there need to be expansion within the park, there is still lots of room to do that. I don't believe that the city coming up with a master plan, I mean, I understand the idea of planning, but I have to look at it and say, what is it you're going to plan? Are you going to say, tear down these buildings and build something else? Or are you going to say, at the point in time, it makes sense to expand a business, expand it, and if you can't, it'll go to R18? Well, that's kind of where we are anyway. We can spend a lot of time looking at this, but nothing is going to change. Again, if we had 10 or 15 or 50 acres that was sitting vacant, then I agree with the idea of going back and doing a big study. But the truth of it is, no matter what the study is, the market is going to dictate what happens, with the review of the Planning Commission and City Council to make sure it's done right and done well. And I don't know that holding this off for a large master plan study is going to make any difference. The owners of the park have been studying this, current owners, for 17 years, trying to figure out the best way to make this work. I don't know that we're going to find some magic bean that's going to change that. It'd be nice to just get this moving on and moving forward. I recognize that there may be some concerns with the site plan that's presented. Again, as we pointed out at the beginning, that is merely a concept plan. We realize there's a lot of effort between now and then. All we're looking at now is master plan that would allow us to move forward on those two parcels. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
If I can correct or chime in on this just a little bit.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate, the city is not requiring a master plan. We simply offered that we would help facilitate a master plan with the owner. If they don't want to do it, that's fine. We're just simply offering that is, in our opinion, a good solution to try to get to a resolution. But that's something we're not going to force on the developer. It's a private-owned property. If they want to go forward to the council and take their chances, that's fine. We just simply offered that, in our best opinion, that's what we ought to do. If they say no, then that's their decision.
Sure, because it is private property.
Yeah.
Now, Scott, are you the owner of record on the property? One of the partners in that. If I might just ask you a question then, are you willing to sit down with the city? Are you willing to look at the overall?
And if I can clarify too, the city will not be doing the plan. They're going to be a consultant that hired to do it. Right. We will not be doing the plan.
Yeah.
Well, we actually have. We haven't had a formal sit down with the community and the staff to review this, but we've talked about it quite a bit. We've actually had other plans that we've submitted that were withdrawn because of partially, it wasn't really neighborhood. It was some of the other tenants in the park didn't like what the plan was. So we have contemplated everything from, again, high density housing to a combination of housing and retail and commercial. We looked at it, we've studied it out, and said, does it work or doesn't it work?
Sure. And
when it comes down to it, there's new buildings are expensive, and you have to get a certain amount of rent to justify building. And we've never been able to meet that threshold. It just hasn't been easy to meet. And then the reason we went back to the single family again, we understand the staff in the city, it wasn't their preferred idea. I mean, that's why the whole thing was master planned 40 years ago for commercial. That was the hope. But with the changing economy, and frankly, in the river bottoms, between our property and in the river bottoms, there's about 700,000 square feet of vacant space. Will that be filled up? Yes, it will be over time. It may take 6 or 7 years of a decent economy, and things will have to happen. But like Paul pointed out, we have designed on the property itself, in the parking lots, without affecting our required parking ratios. We could add about 150,000 or 200,000 square feet of additional buildings. And it's actually a better plan to add it where the parking is than put it out on the periphery.
If there's a demand. There would be.
Right, yeah. But there never has been. We've thought a couple of times, and believe me, we tried. we work it. It's just the new Class A versus Class B. There's just a difference, the mentality of the tech industry coming in here. It's visibility faster to the freeway, and we had the opinion that our neighbors did that. Boy, we can draw from BYU and UVU, and that makes a lot of sense. But the driver of that really are the companies that are coming in and the big funds, and they just have their model is to be on the freeway and to be visible. And so that's been the challenge. So as we have studied it out, and quite a bit recently, and
I mean, I have 40 different designs I could show you that we've looked at, that we've contemplated with real estate agents, commercial and residential, that we've talked to the economic development people here at the city about. We have a pretty good feel for where they'd like to be, and we understand it, and we appreciate it. The city's been wonderful to work with. It's really just economics. And when we look at this, we say, what can we build there that the neighborhood can accept and we could all be happy with, that at the same time does no harm to the park? We don't see that this is a negative to the park. I can't say that I see it as a big positive either. Yeah. It's a minor, maybe a minor positive, but we don't see a negative aspect to it. So it seemed like the logical decision after a lot of analyzing and spending a lot of time with architects and everybody else. It became very clear. And kind of going from your 2-3-story office buildings to your 1 to 2-story residential to the park and cemetery. It's kind of a normal progression in planning. And if we had, we've never owned, we own this building here that's out on 800.
Yeah, in the city over there.
And so it's kind of a standalone building. The building behind it is that's never been owned by WordPerfect or us. So it's always been a little bit of an outlier. It sat vacant for 7 years, and until recently. And we're glad somebody moved into it. And we hope that, and we would expect that if they did further analysis, they'd also see that there's really no harm in adding residential nearby. Though on the other hand, it won't be a real big plus either. It's kind of neutral as we look at it as far as the park is concerned. And did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
thank you. So,
the Department of the Interior is thinking of moving their offices out of D.C., and Secretary Zinke may entertain moving the Department of the Interior here. It would certainly be on the interior, and it might work. Maybe make a call.
Okay, so.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we recommend to the City Council that they change the general plan designation for the 10.9-acre property located generally at 800 East Timpanogos Parkway from professional services to low-density residential. And then to really have a plan in there, they'd have to work with the city and really have a site plan with some detail, right? Just kind of a concept thing.
Okay. Ross?
Just to answer that question, yeah, I mean, this is just a general plan amendment, so there would still have to be a zone change.
Right.
Okay.
And probably with that zone change, there would be some sort of a concept plan that would go along with that. So
Ross Spencer makes a motion.
I'll second it.
Perfect. Mike seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Don't be pressured.
No, I'm not. I would like to just see that amended, that they look at the overall plan, but I have nothing against the project, so I'll vote in favor. So that's an aye.
That's 4. So we are forwarding a positive recommendation.
Oh, I thought we were just forwarding a recommendation. Okay.
I put the word positive.
Yeah.
All right.
It's positive.
I'll do it. Okay.
Okay. Good? Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Can I have a second?
Second.
Ross seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the concept is there.